Hello, I'm Senator Donzella James, and I am standing with some outstanding Georgians who are descendants, many of them, of Sapelo Island. Sapelo Island. Have you ever heard of Sapelo Island? Well, if you haven't, you will very soon. Sapelo Island is a beautiful island on the coast of Georgia, very close to Savannah, about 60 miles, and it's very close to Brunswick, Georgia. So yes, it is existing. It's existed forever, and it's been a part of Georgia's history for a long time, for centuries. So at this time, I am going to defer to Mr. Al Bartell, who will tell you why we're here today and will answer many of your questions, because we will talk about the Geechee Gullah Culture Equality in Governance Act, which is a resolution and a study committee that we will be asking for in the next legislative session. He's going to talk about the case of deprivation, public policy management strategies, the case of regentrification, and Geechee Gullah Culture Equity and Governance Act, as well as the role of the Georgia General Assembly. So, Mr. Al Bartell, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Senator James. The purpose of this communication is to consider a public policy management strategy that can allow the people who live on Sapelo Island, the descendants of the original enslaved people of Sapelo Island, to be included in the bright, awesome future that is now available. When we talk about how to have the indigenous culture of Sapelo Island be included in that future, we have 5 reference points for public policy management. We're interested in having an Equity in Governance Act. As such, an Equity in Governance Act would allow Geechee cultural neighborhoods leaders must now have access to public policy process to the same degree as fully certified lobbyists, and community leaders must now have access to the public policy process to the same degree as fully authorized government administrators, and faith leaders must now have access to the public policy process to the same degree as fully documented special interest groups, and small business leaders must now have access to the public policy process to the same degree as fully registered corporations. Wherefore, Geechee, Gullah, cultural neighborhood, community, faith, and small business leaders have established themselves as public engagement stakeholders in the quest for equity in governance. Therefore, this Public Policy Act is established as a cornerstone for equity in governance in the future of the 21st century. So we're looking at the general protocol of how to have a piece of legislation make its way through the General Assembly. And so the reliable strategy includes a study committee, and that study committee, of course, would be an intricate design from the process of the 2 legislative committees that impact institutions and property. And so we're looking forward to that kind of study committee being implemented as a first step in a reliable strategy for public policy management. The public policy management strategy is going to have an opportunity for the case for deprivation to be communicated. We all are clear about the arrival of enslaved people from Africa to the coast of America. And in 1860, the Civil War began to be a defining point. And when President Lincoln did a public policy act to free the slaves, they were able to have land rights and able to operate as citizens in America. That lasted until President Rutherford B. Hayes, the third president after Lincoln was assassinated, cut a deal with the Southern aristocracy that if they would vote for him, he would pull back the federal troops and pull back the occupation and allow for the Southern aristocracy to regain control of local governments. When that happened, the case for deprivation began to be a cornerstone for the future of places like Sapelo Island. People were then stripped of their land. Elected officials of African descent were stripped from state house and state senate positions in the state of Georgia, as well as the U.S. Congress. Land was systematically taken from the descendants. Ownerships, deeds were manipulated, courthouses were burned down, and property was sold. And the last reference point was that the state government of Georgia bought the entire context of Sapelo Island and established it as property of the state of Georgia. It is now clear that the state of Georgia has the wherewithal in its public policy management strategy to right the wrongs of the past, to look at a public policy management strategy that includes the residents of Sapelo Island, to have the case for regeneration, to look at transportation systems, reliable infrastructure, economic development, education, environmental concerns, can be the opportunity to regenerate the culture of Sapelo Island. The Equity and Governance Act that will look at the role of a study committee as the primary relationship, and then examine the role of the entire Georgia General Assembly in establishing a study committee so that the reliable research can be conducted and the data can be conducted, and be able to design a reliable structure for legislation that has the governance of the future of Sapelo Island be in the hands, hearts, and minds of the residents, of the descendants of the African culture. That concludes the public policy communication.
But at this point, I'd like to thank this group of descendants of Sapelo Island, advocates for Sapelo Island, business leaders from the Georgia community and from different other sources and organizations. And we thank you for listening to us today.